Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a literary podcast where we have been deep diving into your favorite novels.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
This summer, we are talking to some of our and TikTok's favorite authors. In our Summer of Love series, we'll be chatting with best-selling authors about their books, characters, and more. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Marissa Tandon is a Los Angeles-based writer, director, and comedian. She is the co-founder of Tandon Productions, which focuses on bringing new voices to the multimedia and audio fiction space. She loves giving voices to stories that are often not represented in the current media landscape. The fiction podcasts that she's created, The Vampire Show, Super Ordinary, The Sword and the Stoner, and His Royal Fake and Highness, as well as Life on Pause, have amassed hundreds of thousands of listeners in over 100 countries. Her work has been highlighted by publications such as the AV Club, Polygon, and Book Riot, among others. And Super Ordinary and That Vampire Show have both been featured on the front page of Spotify. In addition to her work in audio fiction, Marissa has recently worked in the world of video games on an upcoming AAA title. Welcome to the show, Marissa!
Welcome! Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's funny because we've all talked individually, but never all together.
Oh, so true. I'm excited about it.
So if anyone...
The way you said that, I was like, we talked to ourselves, you mean?
Yeah.
One on one?
Oh, I know you do.
I know I do.
It's true. Yeah, so if anyone's missed it, Amy and I were both guests on Marissa's podcast. You are what you... Oh, God, I can't believe...
Love.
Yeah, I was about to say eat. Sorry.
That was great. I loved that.
I know. I was like, you are what you... And the thing is, you're eating in your...
I am.
I feel like, all right, so you are what you love. I know that, but it was like, but you're eating and you are what you eat. And I just ate a donut. So there's a lot of thoughts.
There you go. Yeah. No, I was like trying to be cutesy with it, right? With the art. It's like you've got the movie posters in the back and the book posters, and then you're eating, you are what you eat, you are what you love.
No, it's a great name. It's like so good that it might confuse someone who's like, listen,
just had a donut.
Who just had a donut and is like, am I a donut? Is that... It's so Amy and I were both guests individually on your podcast, and now you're being attacked by the two of us in one go.
I'm excited about it. You guys were not only individual guests, you were great guests and chose topics that now I've been rereading. I went and picked up my City of Bones books from storage. I'm like getting back through them again, I was like, I need to dive back into ACOTAR. I've been listening to the audiobooks this time.
Nice.
You guys sparked my love for something that I already liked.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, gotta go back.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So if anyone, wants to hear Amy talk about City of Bones, and anyone who wants to listen to me talk about ACOTAR, just like big old warning for my episode, like don't have children here. Yeah. But like, please go and check it out, because I had a blast. And then Amy walked away just being like, she sent me a message right after. She was like, I had so much fun. I mean, that's not the voice. It was in text, but that's how I interpreted.
Apparently that's my voice in Jack's head.
Amy, I'm coming over in 5 minutes. Yeah. No, I don't, what? Why?
Well, Marissa, why don't you tell our listeners about yourself, and how did you get into writing and your podcast? What sparked that for you?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, should we start at my birth? No. This is always the hardest. Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Question always is the hardest question, because you never know, like,
what do they want?
So before I started being a writer, I was positive I wanted to be a computer programmer. So yeah,
that's a twist.
I know, it's a big one. I was like a software engineering kid, or it sounds so bold to use that title. I was a software developer when I was in high school. I taught myself like how to do programming when I was young, and had some jobs in high school, and then took a gap year, which makes me think about the fact that when I was looking for like my path, I was certain I wanted to work for Google. I was very obsessed with the company in a weird way, actually. And they have one of the weirdest and most intense interview processes, to the point that like you look up their questions on Reddit and you try to understand. So that tell us about yourself question always like makes me flash back to when I was so
happy to trigger you so quickly in this episode.
Thank you so much. But yeah, I was pretty sure that was what I wanted to do. I worked in the field. I took a gap year after high school. I was then absolutely certain it was not what I wanted to do, which I think is a great thing that more people should get the chance to do. I don't think the American education system really gives that opportunity.
A gap, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, also just helicopter parents.
It's true. Yeah. But yeah, I think my situation was a little bit different. It made it a little bit easier because I was not necessarily saying like, I'm going to take a gap year forever. I was saying like, I have a possible kind of career that I know what I want to do, and going to school for it would just be taking out loans to do the thing that I can get paid to do. So I think it was good, and it was a unique situation. But it was also good because I would have been miserable after going to college, I think. And while I was on my gap year, the only thing I really wanted to do was write. I was constantly watching TV and like coming home from work and just being so upset. And like escaping into fandom really at the time, and like fan fiction and interacting with that space. And from there, I sort of quickly enough realized that I actually did want to go to film school. So I made that pivot and applied, which obviously I think was scary for all involved, because I went from something where I was like, oh, I think I'll make like a couple $100,000 a year. I'll definitely be able to buy a house, have a nice steady life, to what if I did something where we're all uncertain that I'll ever make $1. So I went to college in Boston. I went to Emerson, which I also did not love, if we're being honest. But I think going to school somewhere that I didn't love for something that I did love made me certain that that was definitely what I wanted to do.
Yeah, if you still love what you're doing at a place you don't love.
I was like, I hate it here. It's cold. This is the worst. But I love to write. I love the class. So yeah, I got my degree in screenwriting. I moved back home to LA and worked in TV for a little bit, which was really fun. I got to work for some of like the networks that made the TV that made me want to
that's so cool.
love TV. I was at MTV as an intern the last season of Teen Wolf, which was
that's cool.
Why?
That's cool.
One of those situations where you like look around and you're like, I think I'm dreaming. I think this is not real. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time doing that, worked in TV for a bit, and then I was trying to move into screenwriting, and in that, I ended up finding out about fiction podcasting. The thing about screenwriting, especially television writing, is that you have to wait for someone to say, like, here is a large sum of money for your idea, and we believe that it will make that large sum of money and more, so we want to make it, which is a difficult thing to do in your early 20s with no real proof that you are worth that investment.
Yeah.
You're kind of like seeing the other side of things. So I was working on the network side, which is an important job, but is a hard job to be around when you want to be on the writer side and you're on the side of like the decisions that make money. And those are sometimes in the way of the creative decisions. So it can be a hard space to be in. And so I was, kind of pushing through like the contest circuit of trying to get something to pick up, meeting lots of people. People love to say like all generals and nothing comes of it type of thing. You're just constantly meeting with people to be told like, oh, I really like you. And
then
maybe we can have coffee again in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going through that phase, and I finally like wanted to do something. A lot of people talk about like kind of going the short, like making a short route. But that's also very expensive and difficult and hard and takes a lot of time. And so I finally found out about fiction podcasting, which was exciting and a very different space 5 years ago when I first started. And I realized that basically people were kind of taking these scripts that they had for pilots and adapting them for audio because they could make the show. And instead of waiting for someone to put that kind of capital behind them and convince someone that your story was worth telling, you could actually tell your story and get it out there. So I did that, and the first show I did was called Super Ordinary, which I wrote by myself and took on way too much work. And that show was about a teenage girl who has superpowers, but they are connected to her panic attacks, so she can't control them.
Nice.
And she gets cast as the villain in her world. So it was like her side of the story. And that was great. And it was really fun. And then it could also be, a little overwhelming to be working in a constant space of anxiety with this character. And I had a couple of friends that we had been kind of talking through, like, what's something fun that we could do now that I understand how to do this fiction podcasting thing and it's working and we're getting people to listen to it. And I've always had this obsession with Hamlet. It's my favorite Shakespeare play.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to talk about mostly today is your podcast, His Royal Faken Highness, which has no right being that funny and cute. Like, I don't know. It just...
Yeah. I was telling Jack earlier, I definitely started listening to the first episode because I don't listen to podcasts. I just never have. So I've never listened to a fiction podcast. And I got into the first episode. I'm like, what am I getting into? And by the third episode, I was like, this better have a happy ending. Otherwise, I'm going to be pissed.
I know. I'm like, you better not follow the Hamlet rules. It was just so, I mean, we're so fortunate to like, because we've interviewed a lot of authors that we love and everything. And so when we connected and we talked about it, it was like, you have no idea. Like when I started listening, I was like, this is really good. And I do not have to fake anything. Like,
it's so good.
So if anyone who doesn't know what a fiction podcast is, it's like, imagine graphic. I mean, it is what it sounds like, but imagine graphic audio, but for free in original scripts. Because graphic audio has become super popular with them making ACOTAR, and now they're going to be doing Throne of Glass and Crescent City. And it's like, you have all these other sounds happening, the door creaks, the footsteps going. So, hey guys, while you're listening to this, like, it's a podcast, you get to go listen to it for free.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a really fun space because you can do, well, we'll get into, I'm sure at some point, I don't want to spoil anything, but we'll get into like certain specifics of the show. But there are certain things that you can do in audio because it is like not on a page, not
Mhm.
in that sort of like, it's not narrated, at least my
Mhm.
shows aren't. So you can just like actually give the space for the listener to imagine it the way that they want
Yeah.
to see it. But I'm so happy you guys liked it because it's my baby.
So let's get into his role of Fake and Highness. What part of Hamlet made you think, you know what, this is going to be a great contemporary romance? Because it oddly works. Not oddly, like you just make it work so well. But it's like, you know, if anyone who doesn't know Hamlet and, you know, you're like, wait, what? I can't remember what's Hamlet about. Lion King. There you are. But like,
but tragedy as well. Like
yeah,
everybody dies.
everyone
Yeah.
dies in this. And you're like, and then you walked in and you said romantic comedy.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good question. I think there's a level of being a little deranged and delusional at times that helps. But this one actually was from when I like read Hamlet for the first time in high school.
Mm.
I had this professor who, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I ever thought I wanted to be an engineer, because in my English classes, I was like the most engaged, to the point that I can still tell you what I was learning in class and these little tiny things. But I had this professor who was just really smart, and the way he spoke really helped me like engage with literature in a way that I hadn't at the time. And I think Shakespeare can be seen as like very stuffy and very highbrow. But as you learn the history of Shakespeare and you learn who these plays were for and how it was being portrayed and seen, it was always for sort of like the lowbrow common person. Eventually it got so popular that then the royalty wanted to be involved and see it and make it something more highbrow for them. But the best part of it is that 90% of the time they didn't realize that these plays were making fun of them. So
Everyone
I had,
dies at the end. Everyone royal dies.
yeah.
How do they miss that one?
They're like, I think it was beautiful. I
Yeah.
don't understand. There's a commentary
Yeah,
involved
they're like,
here.
no, this isn't the English monarch. It's Denmark. Whatever. It's
It's
fine.
Denmark. It's totally different. You guys don't even like those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
So I think there was these two little ideas that were kind of warring with me. I loved Hamlet in high school, specifically because I think in high school you love a brooding, nonsensical narrator who just is, you know, I don't know. Sometimes it's like the same way you love a drama queen in a TV show. You're like, that's the one,
In
that's the
high
guy.
school, in your 30s, big fan. Big
Forever.
fan.
Yeah. And when we were reading Hamlet, I found myself really obsessed with the language in the way that you are when you're 15 and like you think you're a genius. And then David Tennant had done Hamlet in for the BBC. I think I had the DVD, and I watched that DVD like constantly, to the point that I really probably needed, someone should have intervened. Um, but in class, there was this moment. My teacher liked to pull these little tiny things out of lines, and there was one line. I think it was I can't even remember what scene it was, but I think it's in the scene where Ophelia is giving out the flowers to all the different people in the scene, and kind of having a mental break. And he suggested, in sort of like a thought exercise, what if, like, does the text tell us that Ophelia could have been working with Hamlet? That like off screen we see that, like, is there enough to support the idea that Ophelia was planning this interaction with Hamlet and was playing up her madness to be able to help him sort of suss out what had happened here with his father? Most of my class sort of came to the conclusion that no, that's sort of like, you're asking too much of it, and you're putting things there. And I really loved that idea, and it really stuck with me for a really long time, obviously.
Yeah.
But so I was kind of thinking, like, I want to do a rom-com. I went and I had toured the Globe, in like the reproduction of the Globe in London. And they were talking so much about kind of like this was for the common man. People, when we like excavated the original globe, we found crystallized pee on the floor because people would just pee on the ground in the middle of shows. Like people were fighting in the middle of shows. There was so much sort of like, this was where you went for entertainment when it was originally out, despite the fact that it was depressing and dramatic and everything like that. And so those two ideas sort of stuck with me. And I thought, if Shakespeare were writing things now, who would he be serving? And I realized like Shakespeare would love a rom-com.
Yeah.
Shakespeare would be so obsessed with
God,
one.
yes.
He's so raunchy.
Yeah.
He is.
Rom-com is the perfect place.
It's perfect. So I was like, okay, where's a rom-com? I love Hamlet more than anything. And then, because like, people have done She's the Man, which is already like sort of it's from
Twelfth Night.
Yeah. So people have done the kind of obvious ones, right? Like that's an easy one to turn into a rom-com.
And then Taming of the Shrew for 10 Things I Hate About You, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, people have done the obvious ones. What's a less obvious one? And then I was thinking about this idea of like, if Ophelia had helped Hamlet and been a little smarter because she's a smart lady versus a kind of dumb, brooding idiot, how can we, what would that look like for the common man? And then I was like, oh, it's a rom-com. It's a rom-com.
I freaking love it. Have you read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern by Tom Stoppard?
I have not. I've read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. I've read that play, but I have not.
Oh, okay, that's what I meant.
I was like,
by Tom Stoppard.
Okay, there we go.
Yes. And I think they did an adaptation with Gary Oldman.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like your rom-com has done such a good job honoring the original Hamlet, but I feel like there are elements of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead in your adaptation as well. And you do such a good job intertwining both plays into this modern storyline. And I just applaud you. Like, how did you do, like, how did you decide what stays and what goes?
That was hard for sure. I think because at a certain point you do have to diverge if you want people to not die and instead kiss.
Or have a ghost or have someone behind the portrait. Just freaking genius.
So many things.
I had a writer's room. I had two other writers on this show with me. And so I came to them and I was like, this is basically the outline. This is where we're going. These are the moments that I want to keep. And I wanted to pick the parts that would work. So like the ghost, for example, if you put a real ghost in this rom-com, we are going in a completely different direction.
Right.
So there are the parts that everybody, the idea was, what are the parts that everyone knows of Hamlet?
Right.
What are the parts that like the basic person who had to read Hamlet in high school but never thought about it again remembers? And I think those are sort of the skull, which we didn't really bring back in because there wasn't a way to do it. Like people remember Ophelia drowning. People remember the ghost. And people, for some reason, really remember the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern disappearing and then being pronounced dead. Like it's something that sticks to people.
Because it's such a big plot hole.
Yeah. It's so absurd. It's so absurd. So when we were going through it, I was like, these are the moments that have to stay. And so the idea was, what are the tentpole recognizable moments in Hamlet? And then how can we turn them so that the audience that gets Hamlet, remembers Hamlet, goes, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. But the audience who's like, I don't really remember anything about Hamlet and I just wanted to hear something funny, also enjoys those moments and they don't feel tonally out of place. So yeah, I think it was important to me that the opening of this and the opening of Hamlet mirrored each other. So having the two guards sort of walking through the snow, they're not Hamlet, they're not your main character, which is not the typical situation for a movie. Usually, especially with a rom-com, you're going to open on like a messy heroine trying to get to school or get to college or get to work, whatever. So I wanted to mirror in those ways where like structurally you kind of still follow the same spot. And then at a certain point, everything just you just got to throw it out the window. We got to get to the happy ending.
Yeah. Like Rosie and Gil, I freaking love them. Amy's pinching the bridge of her nose right now.
They were like absurd to the max. I don't know that I'm capable of that much absurdity. It was so good. They were so obnoxious, but they were so good. And the voice actors were so good.
Spot on. The voice acting for all of this is so spot on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you guys feel that way. It was the big thing with the voice acting was, for me, it was really important to have the actors for this show in person together in the same studio. There's so much comedy in this that a lot of it is physical, despite the fact that you can't see it.
Yeah.
So they have to be able to kind of have that space to bounce off each other and dig into it. But the most challenging part was the accents, because it was about, I wanted it to have this sort of like Genovia feel of like,
Yeah.
it's over there, it's in
Yeah.
it's nowhere for real. But I had these amazing actors that some of them were like very intensely accented, like they were trained in perfect accents, so they could give you exactly what you were asking for. And Noah, who plays Leo, was a really big instrumental part in getting the right version of the accent down. Because a lot of American actors go straight to kind of like RP British, which is the one that everyone knows. And there is a undertone of that in this show of trying to match everyone to it. But Noah is just such a man of many voices and talents. And so we were playing with it and playing with like, okay, if we change these certain intonations, like if you twist it just enough, it feels familiar but different in the same way. And he was really instrumental in playing with that. And then a lot of the actors started to sort of match what he was giving. So he's like, I think, the most heightened version of it. And then everyone sort of kind of fell in line from there.
I love it. Everything about what you chose to keep and the accents and the acting, it was amazing. Like, I love that you brought in, like, especially like when the quote unquote ghost, I won't spoil how the ghost comes into play, but like the fact that you brought in actual like lines from Shakespeare, it was great. Like, cause you're still giving, credit. I mean, obviously you're giving credit, but it's like an ode to Shakespeare. And it's so, like we talked a little bit earlier of like all the different adaptations of it. And it's kind of that question that we come to time and time again, where it's like, what is it about Shakespeare and his stories we're able to translate so well to the modern audience, and what makes them timeless? So is that something that you were hyper aware of? Like what parts of it is timeless?
Yeah, I think I was pretty hyper aware of it because I think Shakespeare has that quality of timelessness is the reason why it continues to be so, people get so obsessed over it. There's this like split, I think, between people saying it's so intellectual, it's so much, it's so high level, and then the other split of people who are like, it's, historically it's so lowbrow, it's so this, it's so that. I think the truth of Shakespeare in general is that he was telling stories about the people around him. So even when you are looking at these stories of royalty, of fairies with Midsummer, like there are all these different kind of worlds that feel like they are too far from the type of person who would have been watching these plays. But yeah, I think these shows, that all of the shows that he did, there's so few of them that would have been a subject matter that was like accessible to the audience, or in a way that they would have said like, oh, that could be me. Like this could happen to me. And I think the thing about that is that he did exactly what we now want out of storytelling, which is it's just far enough away that I can kind of project my feelings about it in an escapist way.
Yeah.
And so there's that timelessness, I think, is what sticks with everyone, which is that these characters are relatable, but they have nothing to do with you. And on our side of things, it's also from an era that it's the language is not how we speak anymore. The rhythm of it is not the the way we speak and the way people didn't speak back then either.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing about Shakespeare is that watching it performed is really where it comes together. I think people, when you have to read it in high school, people like a lot of times need the cliff notes, need the
it's cruel to
explanation
read
of
it without any kind of context. Like, hey, teenagers, understand this without knowing the passion.
Just read this and get it. No, first of all. But I think when you watch it performed and you see it performed by someone who really, really gets it. So like I have two very genuine examples of it, which are their opposing sides, which is the version of it that's perfect for me was David Tennant's Hamlet, where they're not in period dress. They're wearing he wears jeans and a t-shirt through the whole thing, and he's barefoot. And that, when you watch those performances, it's so stripped down. There's really not a lot of production value to it, but everybody who is performing in that understands every word of what they're saying. And they put their whole heart into it, and they love it. And when you're watching it, if you've read it and you didn't get it and you tried really hard to get it, but then you watch them do it, you're like, I actually understand. This is the first time I understand what's being said. Versus Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which is a very fun movie. And I can't say that like certain parts of it haven't influenced me as a creator myself, in terms of like, it's so silly, but certain things like, okay, they name their guns the sword.
Right. Like,
it's like, it gets a little on the nose, but it's fun. And if you watch that, there are some actors in that movie that know every word of what they're saying, and there are some actors who are just reading it the same way that they were reading it in high school. And so for me, I think the timelessness of Hamlet is that if you can understand it and you can watch someone who performs it and understands it, there's like a deep connection of like, it almost feels like victory. You know what I mean? Like when you watch it for the first time, you're like, oh, now I get it, and he gets it, and now we connect. And so I think that's part of what makes Shakespeare so, like, people can't let it go. And I think it's like a puzzle, and then the victory of getting in the club, so to speak, of getting it and enjoying yourself.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
I will always remember the first time. Now, you're much more of the Shakespeare scholar here than I am, but I remember the first time that I took a Shakespeare class, and then the professor was like, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? It doesn't mean like, hey, where are you at, Romeo? It's more of like, why you, Romeo, out of everyone? And I just was like, my mind is blown, like, because now, like, I see what you're saying about like someone who reads it like, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? It's not like, hey, it's just like, why you?
Yeah, and if you watch someone who gets that, you're like, oh, I see that longing now.
Yeah.
But on the page, I'm like, okay, what's up? Like
he's right below you. Jeez, like, stop
He's
looking for
literally right
him.
there.
He's in the bushes. And it's also like, I think you do a really good job of it where, Hamlet is royalty. They are, none of us here, as far as I know, Amy hasn't admitted yet, but none of us are royalty. And like secret princesses here.
You're assuming a lot about Marissa. You don't know that.
Oh, that's true. We haven't had
At any moment.
the conversation that every friendship has to begin with. Are you a princess somewhere?
I wait every day to find out.
Amen to that. But like, you're able to do what Shakespeare did, which is like, here are characters that like none of us understand what it's like to be next in line to a throne. But I think we can all understand expectations that our families have from us and what it's like to deal with hard situations, be it death or finding that your mom's shacking up with your uncle,
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, what His Royal Fake Highness does really well is pulling out certain themes that we see in Hamlet. That betrayal, the constant lying, and the hurt that's involved with that lying. And I just really love how you boil down Hamlet and Ophelia's relationship of they were friends, there was a hurt, and now they don't know how to agree. Because there was always the question of, do they really love each other during the play?
Yeah.
Of like, do they, like, what is really going on here? But I think His Royal Fake Highness does that really well and really strips down Shakespeare to what we can appreciate, and I think what his audience appreciated back then.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think you're right. It is a question in the play of, I think in the play it's clear that Ophelia loves Hamlet. It's not really clear why.
Yeah.
And it's also not clear if Hamlet really loves her back or if he's just sort of playing a game. And I think messing with that relationship was really interesting and really fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
There is, with any sort of play in general, you don't get what happened before. It's the thing about plays is that you are in the moment of what's happening the entire time. And so finding a way to kind of flesh out what do we have to put into the backstory to make sure that this makes sense was important. And trying to decide, I think, whose point of view we're following. I think making it Ophelia's point of view, which is not a new thing. Plenty of people have done Hamlet adaptations where they've put Ophelia at the center of it. And I think that comes from the fact that while you're watching or reading Hamlet, like the classic version, there is this like desperation to I think Ophelia's character on the page is so interesting, and he doesn't spend the time to really explore it because it's not. I think a lot of people go, oh, it's sexism. Oh, it's like he didn't really care about making an interesting woman. I don't know that that's true because he's made plenty of very interesting women in other plays. I think he chose his point of view and he chose Hamlet. And in these days, sometimes we're tired of watching this whiny character who can't make up his mind about anything. And so Ophelia is this character who on the page, like, you don't really know anything about her. She's involved in these moments that would not be the right space for a woman at that time to be in. Like, she is very close to politics. And then she has just sort of like, the things you know about her from the play is that she is in love with Hamlet. Her father is close to the crown, and she does ultimately have like a mental break and float away. So we have like that one really, really good scene where she's giving the flowers away, I think is probably like food for actors when they get to play Ophelia. But I think it's normal to read something that interesting and see that character be so interesting and be like, I want to touch everything and understand exactly what's going on in her brain. And so that, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's just kind of funny where you're talking about like, when people get that moment of Ophelia's breakdown, and actors, when they're, performing Shakespeare, they have that moment of like, oh, they really get to like, the actress gets to really feed into it. I had the exact same thought while listening to your adaptation and your Ophelia's monologue when she's by the river and thinking about it. And it's funny because I had the exact same thought of thinking like, oh, I bet this actress is having like a really good time with this. So I just want you to know that like what you're saying about other, performers with Shakespeare is the same thought I had with your
script.
Yeah, with your script.
Aww. Thank you. It's nobody can see me, but I'm like embarrassed, but I love it.
Yeah, no, I'm happy.
You're embarrassed, but you love it.
It's like I support women in STEM, but at the same time, like that was a loss that we are able to take because we got your writing, and I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Yes, I think there are other women after me that will be better at those those places. They'll be just fine.
So you've already mentioned that you brought all the voice actors together because you felt that they needed to feed off each other, which was definitely a question I was thinking the entire time I was listening. Is this a graphic audio where you worked with them one-on-one, or did you bring them together? And so I'm glad you answered that for us. But what about the other production elements of this? Why was it important to include the background noises, the footsteps, the kissing noises? Why
did they kiss in person? Like, did they have to like kiss on? Okay, I was.
There's a lot of things. I was like, did they drink, or was that a canned noise? Like, there was a lot that I had questions about. How much did the voice actors do themselves? How much of it was afterwards? I would love to know.
Yeah, well, so this cast, I love this cast. I love every cast that I get to work with. They all have different like kind of quirks, but this cast was really fun because a lot of them I had personal relationships with before we did the show. So Dylan, who plays Clarence, which is our Claudius, and Lily, who plays the Queen. The two of them have been best friends since college. So I knew them in college. We all went to college together. And they are the type of people who will do exactly like if you ask them to go harder, they already start at kind of like a 9 or a 10. And then if they are willing to keep going for you. And they're willing to have so much fun. And it's funny that you bring up the kissing, because I remember when I sent out the scripts, we did our first table read, and one of the actors was like, so do we have to kiss? Like, because there used to be, a lot of them were screen actors first. And to me, as a director in audio, I do not think it is necessary to make your actors kiss. Some people disagree with me on that, but mouth noises are already so uncomfortable.
It's so hard. I'm like, because like you kind of have to play it up a little bit with like, that. Versus like if it was real, I'm not even going to recreate it, guys.
You have the visuals.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of like, are these worms moving through the earth? Like, what is this?
Or is there a lot of like,
there's
hand kissing?
With audio directing, the thing that I think is interesting, and it's not just in kissing, but it's in really anything that would be some sort of physical exertion. So when we're doing panic attacks in Superordinary, or we're doing romance kind of kiss scenes in His Royal Fake and Highness, it all comes down to the same thing, which is actually the breath before. So if you get into like the more intimate moments of this show, a lot of it is the dialogue before, leading up to the kiss, of having these moments where Ophelia is sort of like, as you hear her kind of spacing out her words, or taking a little bit more time in her, or needing a little bit more time, so to speak, in what she's saying as she does it. It creates that visual or that feeling of Hamlet moving closer to her or approaching, or maybe he's kind of boxing her in on a balcony, or these different little things. It's really about the breath before than it is about the actual kiss. Mostly because if I made you listen to noises of making out, like if you watch reality TV, you hear so much of it and you want to vomit every time. It is not sexy.
Kissing sounds without a visual. It's horrible.
Yeah.
No. So it's really about the tension before, which I think that's romance and spicy scenes in general. Obviously, I will give a disclaimer that this is because it's audio and because of that, it's a lot of fade to black. We get the kiss, we get all the tension before.
Oh yeah, no, it was like all of a sudden. I mean, there was I don't know what I was expecting, but there was a moment where it was like, I mean, I apologize for the spoiler, but it's like they wake up in bed, and I was like, wait, what? What just happened? And I'm like, I don't. And then I had to really question myself of like, what was, because this is like very PG friendly, like it is very family friendly in the best way possible. Yeah. And then I'm like, did I want to hear anything? I'm like, I don't think I did. But did I? It was because I'm like, I don't know, but I won't say no. And it was, but like you also do a good job of being like, well, we're going to address it without addressing, without like saying the obvious thing here.
Yeah. I think if you build the tension in audio, I have had some friends in audio who have done it, and they've done it in a way that it's not uncomfortable, like it's successful. I think there's ways you could do it. You could play with like sheets ruffling and beds creaking and things like that. But for me, I was like, I just think it'll distract a little bit. Plus, a lot of people listen to these things like in public or like at work or in the car. And if you're in the car, like trying to pay attention to your drive and suddenly perhaps you're no longer paying attention to your drive.
As someone who listens to the smuttiest smut while driving, that is true. That is absolutely true.
It's true. Yeah. And I didn't mind the fade to black because anything else would have been, I don't know if fan service is the right word, but it wouldn't have served the plot.
No. Yeah.
Right? There wasn't going to be a conversation during the scene that furthered the plot or the relationship, so why have it? But it does crack me up because Jack is the queen of smut, and of course you would expect like...
Yeah, I really had to dig deep about myself where I was like, wait a minute, because like it would have taken away from the story because like they're half-hour episodes. There's 10 episodes. Not gonna lie, I was very upset because like at episode 9, I was like, "Oh yeah, there's 12." And then at the end of episode 9, I was like, "What fucking bullshit is this? I only have one left." So like you have to use your time very wisely, and it's spaced and paced very well. Like it is, even the bachelor party was freaking amazing. Like I can't wait to now that Amy and I've both listened to it, I can't wait to like one day like yell, "Are those wolves with lasers?" Like just in random just say that to situations a lot. Like I go for morning walks and I'll like pause, look over. Is that a wolf? Lasers?
Oh, there's something very fun about listening to you guys react to it because there are certain comedy moments that when we put it on the page, I was like, I hope this works. Like, I hope people get it. I hope it's not too outlandish.
It is, but it's not. I don't know how to describe it. Like, there are moments that like it has to be, and I don't use this as like in a bad way at all, but it has to be like ridiculous just enough without being ridiculous.
Well, and it comes late enough in the story that you understand just how outlandish Rosie and Gil are. Mm-hmm. So, of course, Gil would get wolves with lasers. It like makes total sense.
And
it's believable. I didn't have to suspend my disbelief because Gil had proven to me.
Yeah.
Time and time again that this is the person he is.
Bar that you only have there's a bar located everywhere, so you only have to step 22 steps to get there. Like I really love that.
That is actually hilariously to bring a full circle moment. That is a Google reference that no one except me would understand. But when I toured Google's offices in New York, and at 17, when I was doing this tour and so certain that this is what I wanted to do, one of the reasons why I was like, Google is so cool, was in their offices, they had an unspoken rule that no engineer was more than 20 feet away from free food. And so they have these like
Wow.
micro kitchens spaced out throughout the entire office. And it was like, I was like, that's so smart. That's so true. I do need to always be able to get snacks without exerting myself. And so I was like, oh, how can we,
That
like,
is,
what would build with that?
I love that.
Alcohol.
I toured
It's
Google
amazing.
Google office like forever ago at one of my old because we were old work job anyway, and it was like they really, this is totally a side tangent, they really build their offices so that you never leave. Like, you walk around and you're like, this is so cool, you have food everywhere and you have like a gym and sleeping pods, and wait a minute, do you not want me to ever walk away?
Well, yeah. They meet all your basic needs, therefore you can be their prisoner for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
At 17, I was like, that's so cool.
Yep.
At not 17 anymore, I'm like,
that's toxic.
I'm just, but like going back to that like bachelor party, I just like was like taking notes, and where I'm like, Amy, I want you to take notes for one day for me.
Like, so you don't want a garden party is what you're telling me.
No. It's like, what was it? The way that Gil introduced the women coming up to the stage. Like, I love that bachelor party scene so much. So much. But then it leads to like the most sweet romantic moment ever. So
it was so good.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, the one thing I will say is, like, when you guys were asking earlier about the parts of Hamlet that I wanted to keep and reference, and the point of Rosie and Gil have already explained by this point in the show how absurd they are. The reason I wanted to lean into their comedy being so out of this world, out of control, was because that's the same sort of curiosity that you have. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in the original play, you're like, who are these guys? Where did they go? Oh my god, they're dead. And so it gives you, they sometimes feel like they are in a different play purely because they seem like they shouldn't be there. Like they're not there for a lot of the time. And so leaning into it, I was like, I think we can have fun with them. And so So.
Well, and I felt like they were so absurd, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is an absurdist play. So it was just like, this is just highbrow. This is so good. I really appreciated it.
It's so fun. And you don't have to, like, even if you don't understand the references, it's thoroughly enjoyable. Like,
yeah.
It
was. And I was fully expecting for them to just disappear at some point or die.
Oh my god.
I really appreciated that they stuck it through.
The fact that Amy's and Maya's expectations varies, like, I'm over here, I'm like, am I gonna get a spicy scene? And Amy's like, so they're gonna die, right? Like, that's
there will be murder.
There's going to be death. Right. Like, that just shows our spectrums quite well. So graphic murder, is that what I'm getting here? Okay. Graphic sex scene, is this what I'm getting here?
Yeah, I love them. They are if I were to go back to this world, the one thing I really would want to do is their love story, because I think it would be so fun.
So that kind of leads me to the next question. I mean, the next question is like, what other projects do you want to talk about? But now that you've like hinted at, like, would you come back to the world? I want a follow up. I want this. Like, now you've dangled not even a carrot, like a little tiny stem of a carrot. I want this.
Mm-hmm. I think there are, I've thought about it a bunch because I do love this show and this world. I think there are like a bunch of different ways that we could come back to it. There's the possibility of I've thought about doing sort of Hamlet and Ophelia's college years where you would play with them. Obviously, that can be hard sometimes because we know where they're going.
Like a prequel,
Yeah, and so you would have less sort of romance in that. But I do love the idea of potentially doing Rosie and Gil's love story because we talked a lot about it in the writer's room, and then after it, I was like, a lot of times you spend a lot of time fleshing out things that never make it to the page because you need to know who these people are. And I think they are so deeply in love with each other in a way that at first feels so ridiculous. You're like, who are these people? But the longer you stick with them, and not to spoil, but when Gil gives one genuine speech to Hamlet about love, I think you sort of break that ridiculousness and understand that there's something just very true underneath the two of them. And so I would love to play with what that looks like, where this like soulmate energy of truly you found the exact match that perhaps no one thought you could find would be. And I think so there's that, which is possibly more interesting to me than like the standard, which is like His Royal Fake and Highness 2, the royal wedding. His Royal Fake and Highness 3, the royal baby.
Well,
like,
I mean, I would be the royal baby. Baby's in charge now. I would be really curious to get that homecoming weekend.
Yeah, I agree. There's, we enter His Royal Fake and Highness with everybody assuming Ophelia and Hamlet are already in love. And it's not until much later in the play that they realize that there were moments in the past where that love was blossoming. So I really feel like you could explore Rosie and Gil and this fantastic relationship and still have the tension where these two idiots are falling in love but don't realize it in the background.
Yeah. Like that homecoming, like you teased a lot of it. Like there was a lot of moments of like, and then they did this. I was like, and then what? And then what? Yeah. But like Amy gets a good point. Like have the two fools fall in love, have the tension happening. It's all genius.
Yeah, I think it could be fun. I think Hamlet and Ophelia could have been together for far longer than they are. They spend so much time hating each other, but I think ultimately like sometimes it's just because you're too afraid to lean into what it actually is.
If you gave me like, I don't know, I was about to say like a 3-episode arc. No, I want 15. But if you were to give me like a little episode arc and just end it with the tension of like homecoming and them like almost kissing but not, I would go wild. Like that would be, it would just, because then like just that tension of like it could have been sooner, but then knowing that like later on in the year all this other stuff will happen to them. But but like, okay, do you have any other things? Because you also, Tandon Productions, which is your production company, has so many things happening. Are there anything else? Any other? I mean, it's hard because like I was going through the list and there's a long list, but
there's a lot. It's my obsession, my job, my pride and joy. I think probably so there's two that I think if you like His Royal Fake and Highness that you will also like, that are fiction shows. One of them is The Sword and the Stoner, which is that's what it sounds like. It's a stoner comedy adaptation of the King Arthur legends set in modern day.
I love that.
So brilliant.
It's so fun. I love that show so much. Season 2 is in post-production right now, so it is coming back. And the actor who plays Clarence in this plays Arthur, which is a totally different role, totally different voice.
I can't imagine that.
So much fun.
Like,
yeah, it's a completely different. Dylan is so talented across the board. He's an incredible actor in general, incredible comedian, and an incredible voice actor. They sound completely different people. And I love working with him. And now if he listens to the season, you're like, okay, we get it. Like, but yeah, I think he and Sam, who plays Merlin, they really did what I asked, which was, again, sort of like, what if we took this very classic thing that everybody respects and we made them stupid? That's
I love it.
The core concept. But yeah, that one's really fun. I really love that show. And then the flip side is for those who perhaps are more fandom centric, fan fiction centric. There's a show that we do called That Vampire Show, which also shares a writer from the show, Alex Wisenhunt. And that one is about a teenage girl, Kat Wright, who is obsessed with a TV show that may or may not feel familiar if you are a fan of
Schmushy?
teen supernatural stuff. But it's she's a fan of this TV show. She writes fan fiction for this TV show, and she wins a fan fiction writing contest for this TV show, where she then gets to go to set and meet the creator of the show. The only problem is that she is obsessed with the villain of this show getting a redemption arc, and the showrunner is perhaps going through some things and is not happy about the fact that people want this villain to be redeemed and baby girlified. And so he chooses her to win it to kind of make a point. And so it does not go well. And they sort of end up in a massive feud that shakes the fandom and the TV show overall. And if you wanted more episodes, that one is
it
much
also
longer.
another like romantic situation, which I'm hoping?
Actually, it was really important to me on that show that it was not, because the showrunner, this is enemies to enemies. There's
Jack's distraught face.
Like Kat is 18. Like it is not. I'm not a big fan of like age difference and power dynamics.
Oh, okay.
That's
fair. I mean, I forgot about that part. It was just, I mean, like
there are romantic elements for sure. Like she is writing fan fiction. You do hear about like this TV show that's happening. There are romantic elements in that. And season 2 is in production at the moment, and there are romances in season 2 to spoil a little bit. So there are romantic elements, but the main like storyline is not a romance.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. My brain needs to be re-examined. I hope I can, I know Pride and Prejudice has been done a million ways, like left, right, and center, but I feel like you would do such a good job with it. Like I know there's been a million and one retellings of it, but I think
or a really good Emma,
or a really good Emma. Like I just think that like you could do a great job with any Jane Austen.
It's so funny because I did not like Jane Austen in high school. Pride and Prejudice was maybe I think I complained about that book every single day that we read it. I was like, I do not understand why people like this. They are just walking in circles. This is so stupid. Like I really genuinely hated it. And now as an adult woman, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like it's still timeless.
Yeah,
it's so like, it's great. But it's so funny because it's like, I think it would be the flip side. I would really have to find like Hamlet and Shakespeare and the King Arthur legends are things that I really had like this deep love and obsession for when I was a kid.
That's fair.
And so it would be fun. It would be a fun challenge to, I think, like hope that I could do enough justice to Jane Austen from that perspective, because I think I know the other classics that I've taken on so inside and out that I can make those references. I would be nervous.
I feel like
Pride and Prejudice is so beloved.
Persuasion would be a good one too for you if you wanted to avoid, the Pride and Prejudice of it all, because that's a depressing as hell book. And I think like people really shout on the Dakota Johnson version of it. I loved it. I was because I mean it was like, again, it kind of has like a ridiculous factor to it, and it's it's a very depressing book, but so I was like, I enjoyed it, but like I think I can see definitely where your talents, I mean I can see your talents everywhere, but like taking something that would be like, this is kind of depressing, and be like, but what if it was not?
It was fun. I love to do that. And then I think that's why sometimes there are moments where when you lean into the depressing from the original text, people are like, whoa, but it's always a little fun. I love a little 1-2 gut punch,
I love being punched. So it is, don't knock on wood. Don't want to manifest that. Well, thank you. And then again, if anyone I hope everyone goes and listens to your other podcasts where you host it. Yeah. You Are What You Love, whether it be donuts or books or TV. And that's where you interview various guests to discuss things that they love.
And please listen to Jack and Amy talk, because I really, really loved having both of you on. And I think we had some revelations for myself as well, since we chose some cool topics. So I really enjoyed those conversations. I always leave those episodes and those recording sessions feeling like, oh, like I feel like we just shared a deep moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it feels like kind of therapeutic for hopefully both sides, but definitely for me. So.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was very intimate. It was very like, I walked away feeling like both relieved and heavy.
Wait, what
I don't know.
Let's talk about it. Was so when this comes out, Amy's episode will have already been released, and I will now know what's going on. But at the point of recording, what did you discuss? That's
you know, I don't want to spoil. Amy, you can feel free to share if you want, but
no. I want to be.
Let's leave the mystery.
I want to go and be surprised, but like I'm also like. Yeah, and I mean, it definitely took a turn. Like, I mean, it really was like a therapy session where it's like, I'm going to start at the top here. And then it's like, all right, we're going to dive into it. And
we're going to devolve real fast.
Yeah, like just discuss social norms around everything.
Yeah. And then as soon as you get into a really deep moment, I'm going to let you know that we've hit the 55 minutes and it's actually time for you to leave.
Bye.
Joke's on you. You booked me for 2 hours on my calendar. We're getting into it. Well, thank you so much. And if you I was like, if you ever want us again, but if we would love to have you come back sometime to talk about, to interview again. Thoroughly love talking to you. And, I don't want to invite myself to your show again, but that just happened. And so I'm on tap if you ever need me or Amy, we're around. But like I would love to have you back to talk about just life.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I'd love to have you both back, and I'd love to come back.
Great. And do you want to tell our listeners where they can find your shows, your production company?
Yeah, you can find You Are What You Love, hopefully wherever you're listening to this, unless you are doing some sort of super secret thing that I don't know about.
No.
We're on every podcast app. So You Are What You Love, if you search for it, I think there's another You Are What You Love podcast that was like abandoned. That's not me. But mine is a cute picture, as we talked about earlier, of a cartoon version of me eating hearts with lots of posters and little Easter eggs behind it. So there's that. And then you can find His Royal Fake and Highness. Same way, you can search for us in any podcast app. But you can also find all of our shows with all the links at tandonproductions.com. And you can see all the art. You can click. It's all very helpful, I think. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
All right. Well, thank you. Talk next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this mini episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com or via our Camflare voicemail system. Please visit booktalkforbooktalk.com for more information.
You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye!
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per details.